Colours communicate for you, plus they account for 80% of brand recognition. So for your personal brand, your personal style, or your personal spaces, are you choosing your colours intentionally? That's what I want to talk about in today's episode. I'm going to be sharing my top 3 tips for choosing colours that you won't regret. So grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. I was recently invited to a Barbie themed party, and as you probably know, the signature colour for Barbie is pink, and this is what I chose to wear. And I had a few friends over prior to the event, and when I opened the door to one of my friends, they said, "Diane, I wasn't sure what you were going to wear because your palette is black, white, and red." And it took me by surprise because even though I know that this is what I wear the most, it didn't really occur to me that other people would notice this. Even working in personal branding, I was surprised at how quickly this comment was made. When it comes to your own colour palette, how are you using colours to increase your brand recognition in the marketplace? Before I dive into my top tips for choosing your colours wisely, I want to start with why colour is so important. Research has shown that first impressions can be formed within 90 seconds, and it has also shown that 62% to 90% of those first impressions is based on colour alone. So, how are your colour choices communicating for you? With the stakes of your colour choices being so high, let's dive into my first tip for making smarter colour choices. Tip number 1 is to consider the psychology of colours. The renowned artist Georgia O'Keeffe said, "I found I could say things with colour and shapes that I couldn't say any other way, things I had no words for." We have been conditioned to attribute certain meanings to certain colours. So let's dive into what some of those meanings generally are. Let's start with red. Generally, red is said to mean things like energy, power, passion, courage, and confidence. Some examples of businesses which you would know are associated with this colour are McDonald's, Coca-Cola, YouTube, Netflix, and the Red Cross. Take yellow. This is attributed to sunshine, positivity, happiness, cheerfulness, and energy. Examples of this are Shell, Hertz, Snapchat, IKEA, Chopper Chops, and the LA Lakers. Green is growth, peace, nature, health, and abundance. Examples are Spotify, Starbucks, Rolex, Heineken, and BP. Blue is a colour that conveys trust, authority, intelligence, friendliness, and calm. So think LinkedIn, Gillette, Yale University, Facebook, American Express, and PayPal, for example. Purple is a colour that is often attributed to royalty, wealth, luxury, spirituality, and mystery. An example of this might be brands like Cadbury, Hallmark, and FedEx. Pink can mean playful, love, nurturing, passion, and youthfulness. As I've mentioned, an example of this is Barbie. It's also things like Baskin & Robbins, Johnson & Johnson, Donut King, and the National Breast Cancer Foundation. Orange can mean energy, optimism, fun, warmth, and determination. So think Fanta, Nickelodeon, MasterCard, Amazon, and Harley Davidson. Brown is a colour that conveys comfort, reliability, simplicity, sincerity, and genuineness. Brands that you might think of that use this colour are M&M's, Gloria Jeans, Nespresso, Hershey's, and Louis Vuitton. Grey is a colour that conveys neutrality, impartiality, balance, intelligence, and practicality. Examples are Mercedes-Benz, Swarovski, Volvo, and Wikipedia. White is a colour that conveys purity, simplicity, cleanliness, perfection, and innocence. Examples are Apple, Uber, and Nike. Black, which you may have noticed is one of my favourite colours, can convey elegance, power, mystery, authority, and formality. This list is by no means exhaustive because even the tone of your colours matters. A lighter blue, for example, can convey a feeling of calm and peacefulness, while a navy is strong and conveys authority. It's why it's often popular amongst educational institutions. The same colours can also have seemingly different meanings. For example, take the meanings that I gave you for red, orange, yellow, and black. Those colours can also serve as warnings for danger. The same colours can also have different meanings across different cultures. For example, in China, red is particularly known for being a colour of celebration and prosperity. When it comes to considering the psychology of your colour choices, remember that the context matters. For example, even though I love red, this is not something that you will find much of at all in my personal space, in my home. And that is because red rooms have been shown to raise blood pressure and to raise your heart rate, which is certainly not the environment that I'm looking to create for my downtime. When it comes to making color choices for your personal brand or your business brand, consider if your audience is primarily more female skewed or male skewed, or if you are attempting to establish a position in the marketplace that is more neutral. If you do know what your audience is more skewed towards, then try and think of colours that are going to appeal to those people. For example, studies have shown that colours such as orange, red, blue, black, or white are perceived as being more masculine, whereas colours with a higher level of brightness are perceived as being more feminine. This was particularly shown to be true when it came to the colour purple. So when it comes to deciding on your colour palette, keep your audience and the psychology of colours in mind. My second tip for your colours is to choose colours you love. Yes, the psychology of colours and your audience is really important, but if you find yourself choosing colours for your colour palette that you don't feel any sense of connection to, then you're going to find this a lot more difficult to maintain this consistent color palette into your future. So when you are picking your color palette, try and pick things that you feel some sort of connection to. I, for example, have never used a color in my branding that I don't have some sort of emotional connection to. It might be a fond memory, or it might be something that I discover has deep emotional roots in some part of my life. Whatever color that you choose for your personal brand or your personal spaces, make sure that it is something that you find compelling enough to look at all day, every day, and that it's something that you're going to be able to remain consistent with. My tip number 3 for choosing your color palette is don't reinvent the wheel. There is perhaps no better example of not having to reinvent the wheel than referring to the color wheel for building your color palette. The color wheel is art and science at its best, and it was created by Isaac Newton, who mapped the color spectrum onto a wheel. The color wheel can help you find color harmonies. These are color schemes that are pleasing to the eye, and there's a number of techniques that you can use to determine what the perfect pairings or color combinations are for your color palette. So let's get into what some of those techniques are. For example, you can use complementary colors. This is perhaps the simplest way to use the color wheel. These are colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel, so they provide the highest contrast and impact. You can use split complementary colors, which are colors on either side of the color's complementary color. You might want to try monochromatic colors, which are different tints, shades, and tones of the same base. This one is generally easier to work with while still creating a harmonious look. So just a reference to the difference between shade, tint, and tones is shade refers to the amount of black in a color. Tint refers to the amount of white in a color, while tone refers to the amount of gray. Another technique that you can try is choosing analogous colors. These are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. For example, your red, orange, and yellows. You might also want to try triadic colours, and these are colours that are evenly spaced across the colour wheel. This helps to create a really bold palette while still adding more versatility than the complementary colour method. Though the complementary colour method does have a higher contrast, so this does tend to look bolder. And finally, you can try tetradic colours, which are 4 colours evenly spaced on the colour wheel. But keep in mind that the more colours you add, the more difficult it is to work with and to create a balance that is still pleasing to the eye. And finally, you can use the colour wheel to help you to pick warm versus cool colours. If you were to split the colour wheel in half, it would help show you what are cool versus warm colours. Warm colours like the sun feel more energizing, whereas cool colours like water are more calming. My next tip when it comes to not reinventing the wheel is to compare the competition. What colours are your competitors using? They have probably already done the same work in understanding the psychology of colours, particularly related to your audience. So, how can you choose colours that tap into what your audience is naturally already hardwired for? For example, your audience in a particular marketplace might already be hardwired to associate a particular colour with a certain industry. For example, say you are a bank and you use the colour blue. This is something that is quite common in that industry. But the key to standing out in the marketplace is not just doing everything that the competition is doing, but finding a way to tap into what the competition is doing while also adding your own unique touch to your colour palette to help to build your recognition in the marketplace. My final tip for not reinventing the wheel is to fall back on the colours that suit you. And by that I mean consider wearing the colours that suit you. And there are a couple of techniques that you can try at home to help you determine what kinds of colours are going to suit you. And one of those is called the paper test. And that is where you take a blank piece of paper and you hold it up to your face and you look at yourself in the mirror. If you are seeing more of yellow and orange tones, then it is more likely that you are going to have a warm undertone in your skin. If you, on the other hand, are seeing more blues or reds or pink, then you are more likely going to have a cool undertone. The other test that you can do at home is the vein test. If you have a look at the veins on your arm, what colours do you see? If you are seeing more green, then it is likely that you have a warm undertone. But if you are seeing more purple or more blue, then you likely have a cool undertone. And if you appear to have colourless veins, then you might have a neutral undertone. If you have a warm undertone, then you will suit warm colours. If you have a cool undertone, then you will suit cool colours. Whatever choices that you are making for your personal brand, your personal spaces, or your personal style, then make them intentionally. Thanks so much. Subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.